is my no-buy year. So I found myself in Ulta this afternoon, but I was there with a purpose and I did not buy anything. And the thing that drew me into the store was I had an idea, tempted by one of the palettes that I've been watching some of you piece together beautiful looks with, specifically the Nars Skin Deep palette. I was tempted to pick that up. It's a $59 palette just for eyeshadows, and I had a thought. Surely with the collection that I have, surely if I went into store and swatched that palette, especially the 4 pigments that were used by Abby to put together her beautiful look, surely I would be able to look into my collection and dupe the vibe that she was able to come up with in her video. I also like to give credit to Hannah Louise Poston, who did a similar themed video, a dupe the vibe video, where although she owns the gold palette by Natasha Denona, she still challenged herself to, for the sake of you and I, if you are on a no-buy year, she challenged herself to dupe the look with eyeshadows that were already in her collection apart from that expensive eye palette. And her point wormed its way into my brain and stuck. And that point is that truly, if you take the time to get to know your collection, which a no-buy year forces you to do, chances are you have already in your own inventory anything you need to create a very dynamic look, even if that look is as editorial as that look that Hannah put together with the Natasha Denona Gold palette. The look I was trying to dupe is for a more balanced, harmonious, neutral eye, work-appropriate look. I thought, surely I should be able to do this. So this is the proof. These are the shades that I swatched. This is Editing Mary. I thought I should look up the official names in the Nars Skin Deep palette, and I do apologize in advance. I am pointing only to the far left pigment, but the 4 pigments that I was attempting to dupe are called Taunt, which is the highlight color. To the right of where I'm pointing is the crease color in Undressed. To the right of that is the shimmery lid color Centerfold. And to the far right, the cool brown that I used to deepen my outer corner is called Unbuttoned. I was able to dip into 4 palettes that are already in my collection in order to dupe the vibe of one of the eye looks that Abby Bliss White was able to put together in one of her YouTube videos exploring the range of the Nars Skin Deep palette. So the 4 palettes that I was able to find in my collection to dupe this vibe are the Kevyn Aucoin Face 3 Contour Book, the Charlotte Tilbury Glowing Pretty Skin Palette. This was a Nordstrom exclusive in the 2018 summer anniversary sale. Pat McGrath Labs Tilbury Bronze Ambition 6-pan palette, and the Identity palette from Persona. Currently in the frame are all of the pans still in the original palettes that I plan to use to dupe this look. For the all over lid color or the brow highlight, what I'm going to use is the Charlotte Tilbury Face Powder in shade number 2. To deepen my crease, I'm going to blend these 2 Kevyn Aucoin sculpting powders in the shade Medium and Deep. For the lid color has an interesting, I don't know if the camera is going to pick it up, has an interesting shift. Although in the pan it looks very silvery metallic, What carries on the lid is a warm gold with a taupey shift. So that's an unusual undertone and tone that differs fairly substantially from what you see in the pan. So what you see in the pan looks a little more cooler and silvery, but it has this distinct taupey undertone, and I'm able to dupe that fairly accurately with a blend of Seductive and Bombshell from the Persona palette. And then to deepen the crease, the Nars pigment is a satiny, deep brown, bronzy brown, but the way it reads on the flesh is fairly cool brown with just the barest shimmer. And I thought I could get fairly close with my Pat McGrath Bronze Ambition palette, the deepest shade in Illicit. Now, one of the things to keep in mind while you're blending shadows is, just like an old master painter who's such as Rubens, who is able to hit an incredible range of vivid, realistic flesh tones with just 3 earth pigments: earth yellow, earth red, black and white. With those 4 pigments, he can match virtually any tone and undertone and luminosity when depicting human flesh. Cosmetics are no different. What I'm looking for when I attempt to dupe this palette or dupe the vibe of this palette are 3 things. Number 1 is color, number 2 is undertone, and number 3 is finish. So this first pigment, this lid color slash brow highlight, is barely visible on my skin. It's an all over, fairly transparent. Of course, it's been rubbed by my sweater as I transported my illicit swatches home. It barely registers, but it barely registered on my flesh when I first swatched it. So I thought one of my face palettes would be an ideal dupe, and it turns out that this shade, and I'm going to swatch right underneath, or right to the left of that original swatch. The Charlotte Tilbury is very close. It's perhaps less peachy, more yellow undertone, but I feel that the effect is going to be very similar on my eyelid. As you can see, when you blend out a shade like this, really you're just getting luminosity and you're building a brow highlight. Okay, so this is the, again, it's rubbed off a little bit, but I'm going to take the Kevyn Aucoin contour shade in medium and swatch it right next to that pigment. Now that's fairly close. It's cooler and it's brushed off a little bit. Now honestly, when I hit it with the deeper tone and rub it back, I feel that we get much closer to the undertone. Although it's still a little cooler, you have to consider that this has brushed off almost entirely, the original from the Nars palette. I had about a 10-mile drive transporting these swatches home, and they do show somewhere. Okay, but I feel that that's going to be fairly close. It's going to get me in the family for my attempt to dupe this vibe. Now, this pigment is more interesting. This is going to be the shimmery lid color. And the way I'm going to attempt to dupe that is with my Persona palette with 2 pigments, the Bombshell and Seductive. And I'm just going to swatch them here on camera. That is the Bombshell, which is too cool, too one-dimensional taupey. It has rather a cool brown, gray undertone and a gray flash. I'm sorry, and a golden flash. But if I dip over here in Seductive and go right over the top, look how that warms it up. And then if I blend it in, it becomes even closer to that. You hear on the perimeter, you can pick up some of that cooler tone that I got with Seductive. So I feel that that gets me in the family, that gets me close enough to Dupe the vibe. And then this last color, this very cool shimmery bronze color from the Nars palette, I felt that this Pat McGrath pigment from the Bronze Ambition palette was going to offer the best dupe. And again, it is not an exact match, but by the time it blends out, I feel that, especially up here, you can see that same kind of cool brown undertone. I feel that that is going to get me in the family. So left to right, there are my attempts at duping, and I will be right back to apply that look on my eye. Through the modern convenience of my cellar water and a pause button on my phone camera, I was able to just wipe off my daytime lids and I have tapped on a neutral eyelid primer. I'm using the MAC paint pot in the color Painterly, and as you can tell by the indentation, this has been in my collection for just over a year. It's starting to pull away from the side of the tube, which reminds me I really should pull it into my rotation so I use the product before it goes bad or dries out. So that will make it onto my vanity. The other thing I have done differently that is worth mentioning, on my lips I have the L'Oreal Color Riche formula in the shade 906 Burnished Blush. It is hydrating, lush, sheer, and pigmented, which are exactly the qualities that I would be willing to fork out $38 for the Chanel product. But I will make do with this for the remainder of the year. I do find that although I've only been collecting for about a year, my high-end cosmetics truly, I should really be able to dupe any look or effect, or if not both, with what is currently in my collection. So that is my anti-consumerism message for you as I begin to dupe this look. Now I still have mascara for my day look. I did attempt to take off some of the under eye cosmetics, but this is not a straight up blank canvas. All over. To set the MAC paint pot, I'm going to go in with my Sonia G Worker 2, that's the larger worker brush, into that Charlotte Tilbury face powder in the shade 2, and tap it all over my lid. This will set the lid. This will give me a neutral canvas to work on. I will fast forward over the right eye application. Going in with a fairly dirty Wayne Goss number 17 rounded goat hair brush. I am dipping into the two pigments on my Kevyn Aucoin. These are contour pigments, but they will work on your eyes, they will work on your cheeks, they will work wherever you need them. And I'm just going to dip back and forth into the shade medium and deep, loading my brush and tapping off. I'm going to concentrate on the outer corner and the crease. Now when Abby Bliss White put together her look, she actually went all over the lid, so I'm going to do that. And she did remark on the pigmentation, but also remarked on how she was able to blend that out. So I will be doing the same thing with the brushes that I've mentioned. And I've already lost my, here we go, my Sonia G brush. Okay, so I went a little heavy right there, but I'm going to take that lid color and just blend the upper edge of that dark crease slash lid color. All right, I will do the same thing on the other eye, but fast forward the process. Underneath my lid with my favorite cheap flat shading brush from Sephora, I'm just going to take those same two pigments, tap them off, and run them on my lower lid. All the way across. So far we just have a neutral eye, shaded all the way up to the crease and a little bit over to de-emphasize my brow bone, which is hanging down a little bit. I'm taking a smaller round brush and the Wayne Goss number 20, also goat hair. And at this point, I'm going to intensify the outer corner with Illicit from my Pat McGrath palette. Now this is, at this point, fairly similar to a bronze look that I did early this year, but I am just swirling, blending, building slowly, opening my eye so I can see how high I need to come. Everybody's eye architecture is different, so the advice I've picked up from other makeup artists is to leave your eye open as you're blending up so you can see how high you need to come. At this point, the look is truly almost done. I still have the brushes that I've used out. I'm going to use my Chikuhodo Squirrel Hair GS9 to apply the shimmer shade. Now for the shimmer pigment, I am blending the two from the Persona palette. I'm dipping into Seductive and Bombshell, tapping off and just tapping onto the center and over to the inner corner and tapping to blend out. Now I will insert, I don't believe Abby deepened the outer corner. I believe in her look, the one that inspired me to attempt this, I believe she did not darken the outer corner. She just did a two-tone lid, which is another marvelous effect which I could do just leaving off the Illicit from the Pat McGrath palette. It is that simple. She then went in with the original crease brush. I'm going to knock off excess palette. I've got a little knit swatch here on my desk which I use for two things: as a coaster for my coffee and to knock off excess pigment when I'm doing looks in my studio and filming. So all I'm doing is blending, blending, blending. I already have my brows done. I already have my mascara on, because essentially I'm just topping off my makeup at the end of my workday. The only additional thing I did for my workday was add liner. Still have liner at the roots of my lashes, so I'm just going to redo not my wing, but this slight deepening at the outer corner, which just serves to extend my lashes a bit, and I will run it a little bit underneath to intensify my lower lash line without overdoing it. It would be clear insanity to run out and purchase any of these palettes to dupe a $65 palette, but if you're inspired to dip into your own collection and put together a Nars Skin Deep look, for me it was cathartic. I truly feel that I learned more about my existing cosmetic inventory. I learned more about how I can combine pigments that I naturally have, I learned how to start that process of matching, of breaking down, matching, duping a look into 3 simple achievable goals: duping the color, the undertone, and the texture, and learning that actually in the application of the whole look, you can get close enough. You can get close enough to dupe the vibe with what is already in your collection, probably 9 times out of 10. Thank you again for spending a little bit of time with me this evening. Please hit subscribe and the bell and like if you haven't done so already. I would love to see what you do with your collection. So thank you again for sharing a bit of your evening with me. Have a great week. Ciao. Oh, and head on over to Abby Bliss White's site, and if you subscribe, tell her I said hello. Thank you. Ciao.